Gene Ward, House Minority Leader.
Emeritus.
Emeritus.
I'm older than, no, it's a
Well,
cycle. I've been 3 times the minority leader, and now I'm the emeritus.
wow. Okay.
It's been a few years.
It's been a few years since we saw each other at the prayer breakfast.
Yes, in fact, that's how this came about. Now, this is what, 3, 4, 5 months later, but
Yeah.
yeah, you guys did a great job at the prayer breakfast. You kind
We
of
tried. Yeah, I was pulling people in.
what do they call it? Bearding someone and then interviewing them. But the T-shirt you gave was really good. You guys got quality T-shirts. The one, if you interviewed, you got a T-shirt.
Yes.
I took one home and I wear it. It's just really soft. Is the point?
Oh, good. Well, we have another one for you.
If I say the right words today, I'll get another T-shirt. Oh, what a great award!
Well, speaking of the prayer breakfast, that was the first of its kind, meaning the largest group of people. I think the number was somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,400 to 1,500 people.
Yeah, the convention
in one location.
We've never had it in such a large location as that.
Right.
That makes a huge difference.
And so, being in since pre-COVID. So that was the largest gathering of that many people prior to that.
Which says it's alive and well in Hawaii as the prayer breakfast goes.
So the first time I got to be introduced to you, I didn't even know who you were. I was being, I don't know what the right word it is, but my kids, my son, James, he was in middle school. And I would get yelled at from him in love, crying because I refused to slow down the car and roll down the window so he could wave at you, waving your sign.
Now, did you say that just to make me feel good? I mean,
No.
I mean, that's touching. I love that because I love the way to wave to the kids, and if the windows roll down, I said, study hard, make your parents proud, and then usually the mothers will light up. So. Give regards to your son.
I will, yeah. It's so funny. That's how I first was introduced to you, is waving and all that.
Waving on the side of the road.
And I thought, wow, this guy is serious about what he's doing.
That's poor man's television, I mean, this is the real thing, but that's the poor man on the side of the road waving.
Well, I didn't want to get right into our conversation, and I hope we have a chance to come back to you. But I just listened to Governor Ige. He said the unvaccinated are holding us back from opening up. That the majority of people being sick are the unvaccinated.
The polemics of medicine or the politicization or weaponization of medical data is crazy because as soon as you said that, I know a study that says the maximum, in fact, it was in Israel, the ones that were filling the hospitals were the vaccinated. They're passing it off as much as the non-vaccinated. So the data doesn't have the reliability factor that it has. And the other thing that we're missing, which fortunately Merck has come out with, there's a prophylaxis. If you get it, you can get a 50% less effect by just taking, I forget what they call the medicine, it's a sophisticated something, but Merck just got it approved this week, which is a great thing. The other part of it is the unknown spreading. They used to think, well, you got to wipe all the surface, and they said, well, it's not on the surface. It's in the air. So the masking is good, but where my real pet peeve is, we should be, for those who are very anti-vax, or like one of my colleagues in the House, if he got it, he would probably go into coma like he did when he got a shot earlier when he was a younger person, is where we should have a test. And right now, downtown, we are in White Camilo, about 5 miles from here. There's a company called Oceanit, and it has a spit-in-the-cup test, which is right on the cusp of getting FDA approval. And it's where in 10 minutes, it's like a pregnancy test. Whatever colors your spit turns, you've got it. We should have that available. And we've tried to get the government locally as well as nationally to invest. They haven't done it. He may have to manufacture it overseas, but he still hasn't got the approval. But if we have testing, look, you don't want to get vaccinated? Okay, give me spit in the cup. Okay, come on in, you're okay. We are not using that part of science. We're saying, hey, you're vaccinated, and we're creating there's already a polarity in America between the vaccinated and the not vaccinated. The blue guys, the red guys, the Fox News, the CNN News. There's already a polarity, and this is just kind of buying into that. So I would say the hope of science to me is with the Sullivan, Oceanit, spit in a cup. 10 minutes for $20. If he goes volume, it'll even be less than that. That's to me where the hope is. So if you don't want to get vaccinated, you don't want to get vaccinated. But this thing about shaming, and I understand there's a lot of guys that are getting their jobs cut or they can't come into the building. And you know what pushes that back on the other side is some of the doctors and the nurses are saying, hey, I'm out of here. I'm not going to get this stuff. In fact, I was in Straub the other day, and the lady said, I've seen too many COVID patients in what it does and how some of the reactions they get after they get the shot, that I'm not going to get near it. So this is America. Our freedoms are being slowly taken away from the people to the government. I know this is not a interview about the book of Revelations, but we're warming up for a centralized, stronger government. And I think the COVID is just another one of those things of spreading the people, divide and conquer by the government.
To give our viewers kind of the lay of the land of Gene Ward, you grew up in a Christian home, or what's your faith?
Jesus is my savior, if I can summarize it. But I grew up in a, how would you say, agnostic father with a praying in the closet Catholic mother. And they would sit at the kitchen table and argue the existence or the non-existence of God. My father always won the argument, but my mother always won my heart because of what she would say. So basically, I went through as a pagan up until probably in my 30s. Then I realized that, hey, God is real. I did have because in the old days, and I'm aging myself, we had the Lord's Prayer before we started school. I grew up in northern Ohio for my first 18 years. And the Lord's Prayer was kind of like my anchor. It was my church. It was my go-to where peace and all kinds of sort of spiritual things happen. And with that, when my wife had a visitation in Singapore, it was like, whoa, she doesn't fake anything. It's where, whoa, this is real. So we started going to church, and it's been now 25, 35 years as it is. So I'm a faith-based candidate, even though in the beginning a Christian and a politician was an oxymoron, just like Malala, your TV program. Faith and politics. People are going to say, hey, look, that's an oxymoron. It's like a silent scream. You can't have faith in politics. But I know that's getting off the subject. But when I saw the name of your program, and this is for you, Pastor Hibbs, it's like most people don't see faith and politics together. Just like people, when I first started, they didn't see me as a Christian and a politician. You can't be a Christian and a politician. In fact, in my beginning, I thought that. And then I went and I met Representative Hal Jones, who was Youth for Christ, like Kaylee Akina, and people said, you should meet him. He's a Christian. I said, I don't believe he's a Christian. There's no such thing. It was an oxymoron. So I met Hal. He said, if you don't believe it, come on, join my campaign. I joined his campaign, learned that he was a Christian, and then actually the seat I'm sitting in is the seat that he had after he retired. So there was a plan in all this stuff, but it's where there's not a whole lot of faith-based people left in the legislature. And people said, look, if you're going to run for politics, run as a Democrat, because then you can get in easier. And I told my wife, look, I got to look myself in the mirror. Some of the issues, some of the same-sex marriage, some of the abortion issues, that's too much. So I did get elected a second time. And we have, for probably the last 5 sessions or so, had a fellowship luncheon. Representative Mizuno and I bring in a pastor, have lunch, pray, have a kind of a mini homily, and try to keep the spirit alive in the Capitol building. Not in a syrupy, overly spiritual way, but the bishop comes, prays for us. And it's a way of keeping faith alive, because things happen in the spirit before they do in the physical. So my faith journey is still on. I'm honored that God has allowed me to be an elected representative. I've been in now 12 terms, 20 years, 22 years. The last 5 years I had a 70% election, re-election. So and I understand you're a constituent. You moved into the district, or I just realized you live in the district. So it's been an honor to serve the people of Hawaii Kai, an honor to serve the people of Hawaii. And even though I'm in the minority, there is just 4 of us. There's 4 in the House, 1 in the Senate, so there's 5 total. But in the beginning, we have to remember that 100 years ago, the Republicans owned and ran everything. Now we flipped the exact opposite, and the Democrats own and run everything. But there's got to be a minority voice, and I really enjoy that role of being the loyal opposition, pointing things out that need to be pointed out. Because if I was a Democrat, I'd have to toe the line. You want to keep your committee chairmanship? Follow this and vote this way. You want to do this? Don't speak about that on the floor. So we are free agents, and we don't have the votes, but we have the voice, a megaphone, like a microphone like this. And a lot of that makes a huge difference, particularly in Hawaii Kai. We have been able to do a lot of town hall meetings that have pushed back things like, I don't know if how long have you been at the Peninsula for?
7 years.
7 years?
Yeah.
Were we doing the no strip malls on the Great Lawn? The
Yes.
Great Lawn? Okay, that 400 people showed up ready to say,
Right.
Bishop Estate, don't touch that. Those kinds of things, that having the voice and the leadership issue doesn't have anything to do with party, it has to do with serving the people. I should give you one other key to how I enjoy my job, because it all started when I was in the Peace Corps. That's one of the key hallmarks of my background. I was
You were in the Peace Corps?
In the Peace Corps, in the jungles of Borneo for 2 years.
Wow.
Working with ex-hunt hunters, the Muruts, M-U-R-U-T-S. And it was community development, and it got how you serve the community, and they were the poor of the poor. And after those 2 years, I always wanted to make a difference, because I always believe what John Kennedy said: don't ask what your country can do for you. You ask what you can do for your country. So making a difference, running for office, making Hawaii Kai better, making the state of Hawaii a better place to live, has always been kind of my modus operandi. I know that's a little bit longer than maybe you wanted as a brief background,
no,
but those are kind of like the more micro things.
I
that
would
put me
get
today.
mail from you saying, join me for coffee.
Every first Tuesday of the month, this is for constituent services, we meet at Outback. Non-COVID Outback, but it's where we've been doing Zoom, and now we've postponed until we think we can get up back in the next couple of months to do the coffee service. But every first Thursday of the month, I have a beer summit. Now, alcoholic consumption is rarely done, but it was after President Obama, who had a plumber who confronted him in a town hall, and it was Jake the plumber, Joe the plumber. He said, look, come on to the Rose Garden, we'll have a beer. We'll talk about what our differences are. So every first Thursday, I have a guest speaker, either topical or someone who's known with something that needs to be shared by the community. The next speaker is Andrea Tupola. She's going to give us what's going on in the council with, did you know there's a landfill that's being proposed for Hawaii Kai?
No.
Can you imagine a landfill?
No, I cannot.
Okay, that's one of the things she's going to talk about. And there's also a number of issues that have kind of accumulated, particularly, I don't know if you know about the Kalama Valley Senior Living, where the
Yes.
people are really up in
Yes.
arms.
We have a church that's on Kalo that films in that strip mall.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, that is it's not igniting and blowing up, but it's getting to be where the neighborhood board, which by the way is another hallmark of my entering politics and making a difference. I was on the neighborhood board, and that's where you learn to serve the community. So the neighborhood board is doing what can be done between the community and the developers in Bishop Estate, Kamehameha Schools, which the community is really upset because they're not getting enough information. People are not being transparent and open about what are you going to do? How tall is it going to be? How many people? How many cars? That's a very nice, quiet, sedate neighborhood in Kalama Valley. So that is a controversy going on, of which the neighborhood seems to be settling. Otherwise, I would have another town hall meeting like the Great Lawn.
Nobody delivers good news to Hawaii like Kalo TV delivers the good news, because we're the only local Christian TV station that's right here on island with one singular mission: to take the message of Christ even further. What is our mission? You, the body of Christ, encouraged, growing, empowered.
How many Come join us.
Can't wait to meet you.
Help us spread the good news.
The only thing missing is you.
Come on out.
Kalo TV, broadcasting aloha 24/7.
Well, I see you involved pre-COVID. A lot of newsletters, emails. I see you, traveling here and there, and so I have seen the difference that someone that's active in a community is. My question is, as we talk about you're only a handful of guys in the larger
This is 25%
group.
of the legislature, Republican.
And I don't know. I think probably most people feel like I feel is like I have a voice in my small community, but it's still mandated by a much larger community, and we don't feel like we're really being represented within the larger group.
Malala, when you have a one-party state, that often is the case. And I even grew up as a Democrat. I mean, when you grow up and you don't want to go outside of your comfort zone, even though it's changing now from party to policy, what are your policies? People are getting a real wake-up call with what's going on at the national level. Some of the policies are coming down for what's going to be the cost of gasoline, what's going to be an open border. I've written to Homeland Security, Department of Health, the governor to say, are we taking in any of these residents and migrants? I've got 10 weeks and no answer yet. The whole point of this is where if you don't have an efficient go between the people and the government, people don't have any trust. And we have been, as a state, one of the lowest voter turnout. But I would encourage people, if they think, oh, my vote doesn't count, well, you can be in the stadium at a football game, and the player's not going to hear you shouting, but as you shout together, if you're paying attention, and this is where I don't want to talk to the church too directly, but this is where I really admire what Pastor Hibbs is doing. He's got somebody on his staff that looks at all the legislation, and when it goes contrary to the word, he gets on the phone or gets a lawyer. And some of the shutdown of the church, he was very key at doing. The churches have got God and Mammon, not God and Mammon, Caesar and God, where they give all to God and think that's all they got to do, and they don't have any civil obligations, because half of the people in Hawaii in the churches haven't signed up, and then the half who sign up are not showing up. So that civic responsibility is being negated, neglected, and again, if the pastors are asleep in the pulpit, the people are going to be asleep in the pews. If the pastors are awake saying, look, guys, we got to get political puberty, and I say that in a positive way because a lot of people never wake up until they're 40, 50, 60 years old, and they say, oh my God, politics is important. And some of the people who are in the pews who are called to serve in politics think it's the enemy, just like, as I said earlier, the oxymoron,
Sure.
This is bad news, it can't be together. But if the church would wake up, rise up, there would be a huge difference in what can be made. And right now it's where we're sort of slipping away and all the
Have you seen
issues.
that over the years? I mean, you've been doing this for a while.
Case in point, I don't know if you remember the Pono Choices, where we're going to teach kids from grade 1 to 2, 3 to 5, 7, 8 to how to have sex, homosexual or bisexual or whatever. It was the minority. Speaking of what the value is, if you're only 4, you got a voice. We spoke out. I was the first one on the floor to speak out on that. And then Representative McDermott worked with the BOE, worked with the, I call them the mama bears, the mothers who came out like they are coming out in Virginia for the critical race theory.
Right.
And they're saying, no, we're not going to put up with this stuff. It's not going to happen. So that stuff where the voice really makes a difference has made a difference. And without the minority, in fact, can I toot my horn for a second? The millions of dollars that we would have had in our pockets from the pay increase is because there was a minority amendment on the floor saying, let's postpone this, forcing the hand of the majority to pull back and postpone it. And I'm very proud to say that. I don't like to brag about it because I got a lot of crap, if you will, from saying, oh, you're denying me my new increase. Well, we had no economy of any sort. COVID was on. We didn't give minimum wage. The unions didn't get it. And then we're going to give ourselves a raise? No way. So the minority is the one who stepped in and stopped that.
So we are making a difference.
A lot of people don't know that because they say, oh, yeah, but how many people are going to watch C-SPAN and watch all the discussion that's going on in D.C.? The same way with what's going on in Hawaii. Not that many people except those who are lobbyists who are paid to represent a particular idea or a bill.
So I understand there was a vote or something where it went out to people about this mandate, to give your opinion on this mandate. And what they did was the day before there was the hearing or a time to put in your questions or have a statement.
Which mandate are you speaking to?
This was the mandate here with, I believe it was for the vaccine mandate.
Oh, okay.
And my understanding was that there was you can share your opinion online because there was no Zoom calls or anything like that. But they did it last minute, and from that it came thousands of people, sharing their what they felt was wrong to shut down. And when you say, the minority can be heard, it seems like the way that we're heard is by picketing or being on the street or
writing
those type of
op-eds,
things.
speaking out. Let me give you a live example of that. When you think of Mazie Hirono, U.S. Senator, what piece of legislation do you remember that she passed? Because a lot of people say, well, you can't be very effective because you don't pass legislation. Well, how much legislation do you remember?
I don't know any.
Exactly, none. What about Ed Case? He wanted to merge OHA and DHHL. Other than that, it's your biography, your speeches, your assistance to the community, your constituents, and basically a lot of the things that in your persona you represent. Mazie had a fantastic migration from Japan with her mother, single mother, etc. People love that. So when we say you can't make a difference, I think there's as much difference than all the votes. And look, another thing that people don't understand, 80% of the stuff that we do in the legislature is like changing the hands of the clock, adjusting different management styles. Maybe another 10% is where it gets to be, well, that's a Democrat position. This is a and then maybe another 5% where it's really ideological, same-sex marriage, abortion, where it's really ideological, proportional. But most of it's where, how you run your company here. You've got basic decisions that you adjust by management style. And that's a lot of what we do in the legislature. We're kind of like the board of directors of the CEO, which is the governor. Sometimes we can't control him. And some of the things that are getting out of whack in Washington, there's too much executive power that's going on,
right,
where the Congress has got to pull them back in.
So what are you hearing from your constituents in the area of the business, these major lockdowns that are occurring, the vaccine? What are you hearing from? Are you hearing anything?
Yeah, well, in the beginning it was like, my God, how am I going to survive? And we had, in fact, the guests of the town hall meetings, as well as my beer summits, were saying, we may lose 40% of our small businesses. I think it's probably down to more 15 or 20 or maybe 10, but it's where people are just kind of hanging on to survival. Yesterday I was talking to a businessman who said, I couldn't make the payments on the building that I was using for rentals. They foreclosed on me and gave me a penalty of $5 million. And I'm saying, my God, that's not fair. I mean, you couldn't make the mortgages because there was no people who were there. Actually, it's a small hotel. And it's like the damages that we've done to the economy and to the businesses, we still haven't really reckoned with it or actually known it. And some of that stuff is painful. But the other part of it is now where the data is coming in on the social and the soft side, where the isolation, the frustration with suicides being up, murders are being up. It's like the whole social interaction that's missing is like taking a vitamin out of your body.
I'm glad you said that. My all my kids graduated from Kaiser High School,
Good school.
And my youngest son has experienced 3 suicides of his friends.
What? 3?
3 during the last year and a half here.
Oh, my goodness.
And I don't know. We're hearing numbers everywhere on the mental illness that this damage, this mandate, this keeping kids from school, mask wearing. There's all sorts of studies on that right now that we're getting data from.
And the phoniness of Facebook, where you pretend that this is all what reality is, but it's
Right.
not the same as the interactive.
Right, and again, it comes back to real people. It comes back to, as you have said before, you're talking to business owners, you're talking to, I'm sure, nurses and doctors. We are the same. But my concern is that, yes, it's very political, but there's a risk. And the risk, I think that everyone is seeing now. They're seeing the increase in suicide, mental illness, so on. I know that I oversee a recovery group here in town, and I have heard and I have seen increase in relapses and people going into addiction. And a lot of this is from what I perceive, at least, is the schools by going down this path of not allowing them to meet in person. And then on top of that, there's this face mask thing that prevents them from doing it. And again, I'm trying not to get too political in the sense of putting our position on what we've all been wanting to, or all not been wanting to talk about, but being into there's a damage that's being done, and although there is a monetary damage that's being done, there's also psychological.
Yeah, the social,
mental.
psychological, exactly. Yesterday I was in a store and I was talking to a lady behind me whose little son was just speaking so articulate. I said, this is going to be a smart young man one day. And she said, oh, well, thank you. And we were talking about how, is he in distance learning? And she said, no, our school is all in person. I said, well, where do you go to school? Iolani. They are all in person. Now, to say that you got to do a goose step HSTA where you're going to have all of these different things, which I went earlier, I'll go back to saying if you got the 10-minute spit in the cup test, all this stuff would be resolved. But the fact that they have a very strict social distancing, she said masks are mandatory, and it's not been out of control at Iolani. And, Iolani is probably one of the leading intelligentsia of our academics.
We have a mission here at Kalo TV. We continue to be the only local Christ-centered media outlet in Hawaii. God has planted this station to nourish believers and to harvest souls for eternity. It's a calling we hold dear, and today we need your help. Partner with us as we continue to create original local programs.
The church needs to just stick to the scriptures.
She was like this as a little girl.
Running around.
Yeah, running around. Yeah.
Showcase solid biblical teaching.
We reach more people in one day with the broadcast of the gospel.
It's music to God's ears.
Improve our infrastructure, and influence social media. Are you willing to labor with us for Hawaii, for your ohana, for the next generation? Go to kalotv.com and partner with us today. My question to you is, we've had to become scientists. We've had to become doctors. You, legislators, the governor, right, the president, so on. That we've all had to become these doctors, because if we don't, then it's misinformation. Then you don't know what you're talking about. I've tried to go to my doctor and get ivermectin, and
And then
try. Yeah, and I have a great doctor. She's at Straub, and
but she would be in trouble if she got it.
She would be in trouble,
Yeah.
and so here I am, just telling her it's not about the name. It's really about, this is what I know has worked with many
Yes.
of the people I know personally, and I have seen. And it was, no, I can't help you with that. So here you have a doctor that I would think that she knows a lot more about medicine than I do, but I've had to go outside of my doctor to just get some preventative maintenance, right, on that. And so if I say, green, you say blue, and then we're in this debate and we've all had to...
And you cite studies and I cite studies,
Yeah.
and it's like, well, we cancel each other out. I was speaking to an individual who's one of the family members is in a Hilo hospital dying, and they called upon to get some, how do you pronounce it?
Ivermectin.
Ivermectin. And the physician, the hospital said, no, I can't do it. That would be illegal. I would be in trouble. They took a lawyer and said, we're suing you, doctor. We're suing you, hospital, because there is a right to try. I think that was a national issue, as well as, in fact, I introduced that one like 5-6 years ago. There's a state law that says, look, if you're in trouble and you're like the guy in Hilo is dying, you can't stop them from having that. And to me, that's where the polarity and the belief in the medical profession has really lessened, because on the one hand, you say this stuff saves lives, and you think, oh no, it's horse medicine. By the way, it was made in Japan. So it's a slap in the face of the Japanese, who were the scientists who came up with this ivermectin.
It's over the counter in Africa and India. It's over the counter in India. That's what they're prescribing.
Africa is only 4% of the people vaccinated. So ivermectin may be saving the day.
Yeah, and Japan, you're right. Japan was the other one.
I lived 2 years in Malawi, so great people for a great purpose.
So my point is, it's not that for or against. That's not my that's not my position. My position is I have seen people personally experience success. Not only success, like within 24 hours.
Before they get it or after they get it?
Before or right as they get it.
Okay,
so
that's perfect.
They some was taking it as preventative, and others were taking it like once I get it, here's my regimen, right? And within literally 24 hours, they were feeling fine.
I don't see why the medical profession is coming so hard. But I mean, they're unionized, they're organized, and they can make life very difficult for them. It's kind of like a union is chastising one of the teachers, and they get blackballed and they can't be hired again. But as the Merck stuff came out with approval, this is the first prophylactic that they can take. It's not ivermectin. I forget what the name of it that they do call it. But it's supposedly, if you take it and you got COVID, 50% of whatever you're going to get is lessened. And now that's approved. That's the first thing that otherwise when people get COVID, they say, okay, go home and take Zantac or take some aspirin. I mean, it's like, is that all there is?
And you have a 99% success rate, right, of living on that.
Yeah,
if you get COVID.
Even when, yeah, exactly.
And not taking anything.
I think that's with the vaccinated. You have 99.99999 cents.
I mean, yeah, well, without being vaccinated, you have... this isn't...
Then it's the demographics. If your age and your predetermined health conditions.
Yeah, it's... Well, again, we're trying to be doctors. And I didn't really
country
mean...
lawyers.
I really didn't mean to go there. I just mean that there is
But it forces us to do that.
It does. And my concern is, which is what I really want to spend the rest of our time with, is we are seeing, as Christians...
Yes.
We are seeing our freedom taken away of making decisions for our body. We're seeing our freedoms taken away from our First Amendment to be able to communicate. I know that even our own show has been censored by YouTube. We have had within the church, there's a split.
Which politician did you have at the end?
Didn't have any politician.
I mean, if you get censored,
it's different names that we use, different topics. But I have seen those things personally kind of erode. And then I'm seeing just this morning. We've had parents that have gone to their school board and have spoken out about different teachings that they have, primarily this critical race theory, not being taught in school. And then there was one with, as you talked about, sex in school, how to have sex with the same sex, and so on. And so here you have parents with their right to say, I don't want that being taught in my school. And now the FBI is involved to profile those people. So here you have our rights slowly being censored, being taken away, and so on. And I look to my representatives and I say, what can we do? And what I've heard on on the national level, very few Republicans, very few conservatives are speaking out about it. And here I am predominantly in
3 feet away from a
Republican. And I'm asking you, I'm asking the party, any party, Democrat, Republican, Independent, I don't care what party, how can you help us to stop taking away the rights of our choices? And the one thing, and then I'll be quiet, one thing that I'm really kind of honed in on are these doctors and nurses and state workers, first-line responders that have been frontline to this COVID thing, losing their jobs because they won't get the vaccine.
That is the worst part of the cutting edge right there for those who are losing their job and those voluntarily saying that, look, I want my health more than I want my job or my well-being. You have asked the $64,000 question, which we are going to be answering probably over the next 3 to 5 years, depending on how long that this goes. Some of the things that have come up have been with, like, there's never ending. Like, if I ask you, when do you think COVID is going to go away? Well, it's an endemic. Well, how long is it? Is it going to be 2023? Is it going to be 2024? We don't know, and that's kind of like weary and weird. For example, when Mayor Blangiardi said, look, we're going to lock down, they never said that, because of what's on the horizon. People live on hope. There is not the hope that this stuff is going to go away, and I think psychologically we're all at a disadvantage, arguing whether it's pro or against, but the First Amendment issues, when you were talking about the vaccination, I was thinking of the Loudoun County, where I was living in Washington working for the Bush administration at USAID, and we knew some of the people there are very, very liberal, but when it came out to critical race theory, they became very conservative. The mama bear is pounding the table. But if you followed any of the governor's race in Virginia, one candidate said, parents should have nothing to do with the education of their children or any of the policies that are educating their children. It's like, oh my God, you want to talk about surrendering First Amendment or surrendering sovereignty to the government? And that's the trend line that we are going in all shapes and forms, no matter what it is, from the federal government telling the states what to do, because my colleagues, we sell out all the time because the states say, you do this, we'll give you this amount of money. To me, the solution is not an easy one, but we've got to use the science to push back the fear and use these drugs that you said your physician personally denied for you. We've got to get away from it. And then people have got to speak out saying, come on, guys, show me that. And somebody will create a study that says, oh, yeah, this is horse medicine. You're a quack if you use it, because that's what they did with the guy in the Big Island, or was it Maui? I mean, they basically shut him down big time. And others who wanted to come to his aid, and I heard this through a very reliable physician, said, then their reputation will go down if they come to his aid. So everybody is kind of holding back. And the polls, this is where the politicians kind of go this way. The polls are right now, Hawaii is probably 55, 60, shut them down, lock down, vaccinate everybody to 40%. Come on, give us some breathing and some freedom.
So they test the air?
Yeah, I mean,
and
polls have been taken about what should be done, and it's kind of like, well, on the one hand this, on the one hand that. More generally speaking, the blue states are more lock them down, sack them, shame them, don't allow anything to happen, versus, as you know, DeSantis in Florida and Abbott in Texas, they say, hey guys, look, we're adults, we can make our own decisions.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because you talk about science and you talk about how the science has to be kind of where we lead. I'm wondering if it's just common sense. Right?
Science has led us, you're right. Science has let us down, and
right.
Common sense kind of like, well, look, all the studies say this, and somebody like a Fauci says it, and oh my God, it must be true.
Well, I think the original reason why people wanted to take the vaccine, and I think we all were, I think we all wanted to make a decision on should we or should we not, and it really came down to, if I get the vaccine, I won't get sick. That's the original thing, right?
That was science,
right?
Which gave you encouragement to get
right.
it.
And then the other one was, then I can't transmit it, so I can't get sick and I can't transmit it. And then if you remember correctly, it was as soon as you get the vaccine, you could take off your mask, so you're free to take it. And I think that if it would have stayed there, and that truly would have happened, I think there would be a lot more people that would have said, yes, I'm going to do that. But what do we find out? We found out that not only is that not true,
The Israeli study you're talking
the
about.
Israeli study, and then there's also the European study that's on that basically says that neither one are true. You still can
Thousands of
transmit
people
it.
they tested and followed.
The thing about the Israeli study is that it's almost 90%, I believe, vaccinated there in Israel.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that means that the transmission is still going on, and it's still transmitting the same.
You know, I often say that politics is half art and half science. Now we've got science as being half art, half subjective, half opinion, and the other part of it is where the data is. It's like H2O in Hong Kong is water, but in San Francisco it's H3O. That's not the way science is supposed to work, but that's the way the public is being told that, you know, on the one hand you do this and this is the way it is, and then another study pops up. And the belief in science, and people are saying, look, this is my body, I'm going to take the consequences. And a lot of those people, look, we have the DNA of the Boston Tea Party in us. Don't push this stuff too far because I'm going to rebel. Freedom and self-expression in America is so key to who we are, the freedom issue. And all of this stuff is kind of coming and closing in on it. And people are getting frightened. You didn't mention any Second Amendment stuff. There's thoughts about what's going on in the federal level to use OSHA as a way to get the Second Amendment rights less as they are. And it's frightening unless we wake up and speak out.
Nobody delivers good news to Hawaii like Kalo TV delivers the good news, because we're the only local Christian TV station that's right here on island with one singular mission: to take the message of Christ even further. What is our mission? You, the body of Christ, encouraged, growing, empowered.
Come and join us.
Can't wait to meet you.
Help us spread the good news.
It only thing missing is you.
Come on out.
Kalo TV, broadcasting aloha 24/7.
So I think what I'm hearing you is our voice does matter. Just keep plugging away, keep inching away. There's another group that's out there, and I don't know if it's one group, but Pete and I were invited out to a rally. It's called the Freedom Rally. One of our viewers called us and or emailed us and said, hey, we would love to have you guys come out and check this out. And we went out to Waikiki by the zoo, and there was, before the meeting, there was like a prayer meeting that happened beforehand. And then there was a bunch of little speakers that were just talking about their freedom being taken away. There were some nurses. I believe there was also a representative there.
A representative who went into a coma when he had an earlier vaccination. He says, no way he's going to take it. I know he's a personal friend of mine.
Yes. And then there was a few other speakers. And
he's a Democrat also.
Okay. And so what we found really interesting is that although there were some signs that were a little explicit, if you will.
You mean like the F kind of thing that we see often?
There were
yelled at the stadiums when...
Yes.
That is unbelievable.
Yes, we can talk about that if you want.
They didn't even do that to Trump.
So here we have really a peaceful group that really got together, and I mean group of all sorts of families, all sorts of culture that was there. Everything from, full-blown Hawaiian to Haole to kids to older nurses, doctors, you name it, just general workers. We were out there. There was about 2,000 people in a given area, and then we went around the corner, and there was probably about another 3,000 people walking up and down the strip with a caravan that drives in the middle. There was roughly 6,000 people there. Are they being heard? Because I didn't hear any of that on the news.
I didn't either, only by the person who was there, the representative. He told me about it, but it wasn't covered. And that's happening in a lot of places with media. I don't know if you know what's going on with Facebook now and some of the stuff that they're outing and saying that you're promoting a certain type of behavior which is contrary to our own ethics. A lot of the media, we're realizing, has control over our lives, our brains, our thinking, our sense of social, psychological, what's right and what's wrong, which is all the reason why you've got to speak out. And that's why you have a TV and you have a microphone. Pastor Hibbs is giving you the occasion to speak out on that. And it's like if the mothers of Loudoun County wouldn't have come out. Again, this is the liberal limousine part of just outside of Washington, D.C., the highest income in the nation. They are saying no critical race theory for our kids. And they're together and they're moving. And that's how the Boston Tea Party and all the American freedoms were won. People starting out with a leader, someone who's a bit bolder than the others, and it continues. Here, one-party rule has been where, go along, get along. A lot of the Democrats who believe in what I believe in don't speak out because they got chairmanships or they've got particular benefits by being as a favorite of the speaker or of the leadership. And it's a shame because we're cutting our face and our nose to spite ourselves.
Can you explain that a little bit more for those that may not know that?
If you're a freshman, when I went in the 90s, the rule was if you're a Democrat, you don't speak for 2 years, your first session. You don't speak on the floor.
You don't speak at all.
You don't speak on the floor. You speak in committees, but you don't speak on the floor. Because we're teaching you discipline. I was in the Army, if you were in the Marines, you got to get discipline. And with that, you get favorites. Favorites, you could be a vice chair, you could be a chair, you could be given other kinds of perks. And the power that the speaker controls is fearful to a freshman.
What type of perks do you get?
Positions.
Okay.
Desks and offices that are bigger.
Oh.
Titles that can be very self-aggrandizing. Travel to go to various conferences, of which now we have an alliance, so it's not really as important as it used to be. It used to be totally controlled by the speaker as a budget. And you want to have favor because you want to go up the ladder, and if you don't toe the line, you're not going to be in the level and the promotional trend that you do. Whereas, we are free agents as Republicans, and that's why we can speak out against these things. And that's why when you say there's not enough people speaking up, people have got to prod even the smaller groups, the minority, to be the minority. I've got to prod some of my colleagues, say, look, guys, we are the loyal opposition. The loyal opposition means when they say A and we don't give them a B, Malala, you're married, right? Do you make all the decisions in your family?
No.
Does your wife make all the decisions?
No.
Okay, the process is called compromise.
Right.
And that's what we got to do in if a democracy doesn't have balance, if it's all one-sided, then you get what we're nearing now, as the Chinese like to say, a world safe for autocratism, which to me is very, very dangerous.
So there's some viewers watching this, maybe a few, and they heard us. We're talking about this right now, and they're starting. I'm still unclear of how I can be heard. What do you tell the mother of 3 children that her husband just got laid off from a job or fired from a job because he refused to take the vaccine because of for whatever reason, and now he's can't get unemployment and he's trying to figure it out, and she knows part of her duty of why this is occurring is that the government here in Hawaii has chosen that, because if you look at other governments throughout the states, all the states, not all of them mandate that. So it's a governmental issue, right? So it's who we vote in that's making those decisions. They're looking at our government, mainly Democratic government, and they're thinking, well, there's really nothing I really can do. But she's ambitious, he's ambitious, and he's saying, you know what, I really want to make a difference. What's the first thing you're going to tell them to do? What are some steps they can actually do?
First, it's the way you think is the first determinant of the way you act. First is to get their thinking straight and remember their roots when this little colony said to the world supreme power, we're going to break away from you and we're going to fight you. The miracle that we have as an American through the Revolutionary War is phenomenal. The attitude is can-do, the can-do philosophy. And that's the first thing, to get your attitude. You can make a difference. Because if you believe you can't make a difference, you're not even going to try. So the mindset, the attitude is very different. I mean, I'm kind of a natural optimist and utopian sort of a positive thinking. But it's more than just the rah, rah, rah. It's knowing who you are and what you can do. And to do those things, you've got multiple things now with social media. Social media is one of the ways you can post your opinion.
Okay.
And you can do it specifically, gently, and without sour. You can go to the neighborhood board meetings and bring these issues up. They always have community concerns. You've got letters to the editor, and you've got, as I'm sure you're going to be calling me now saying, hey, Ward, get on with this issue. And getting your representative or senator or council person or congressional delegation on the line makes a huge difference. And writing letters. I know this is old-fashioned, but writing letters makes a difference because we rarely get them. And when we get one, we say, whoa, this person took time to actually write me a letter, put a stamp on it, and post it to me. We don't get faxes anymore. But I'm telling you, the way that you can communicate, just the way people are communicating with each other on social media, you can communicate now with power centers like at no other time. And if people don't hear from you, they're going to go their own way.
So what works? Is it the the nice way of doing it? I've seen other groups out here where they're doing some pretty crazy things to be heard. And I think what's happening, the way that we're seeing it, at least from a Christian perspective, is they're dividing, right? There's division being caused in every aspect of our communities. So what would be the most effective way? Writing a letter, you're saying, is rarely done?
I mean, it's not unilateral. It's multi-directional, multifaceted.
All at once.
You got to use all those PowerPoints. Okay. It's never in politics. It's never one person or one issue or one silver bullet that solves the problem. It's got to be a convergence of issues.
Okay.
So and that means you got to take a bit of time and energy to do this. But the point is, it is possible. It's been done. We had a special session 5, 6, 7 years ago because Mothers Against Drunk Driving said, you guys have got to lower the blood alcohol content from 11 to 0.08. Now they want you actually go lower than that. But they pressured so much on the legislature, so much on the governor. The media picked it up, and we had they called the legislature back just to handle Mothers Against Drunk Driving because they had the issue that, hey, too many people are dying on the highway. Now that takes commitment, fortitude, persistence, but the church, unfortunately, Malala, when they lose something, they go home and say, hey, enough with that. I paid my Caesar dues, I showed up, I testified. No one paid attention to me. The thousands of people who went through the same-sex marriage thing tell me to this day, we went and saw 90% of the people who spoke to that microphone, who spoke to you guys face-to-face. You turned around and voted the next day, totally opposite of what we did. So that was kind of like, you're my representative, but you don't represent me. And that's where the opposite can take effect, even though when you do come out and speak, it's not a guarantee, which means you got to get to personally know these legislators. You know, right now, what are we at? We're in the first week of October. The format and the template of 2022 legislation, the stuff that's going to come down and tax you and tax me, is already being planned, not in the cigar-filled rooms, but in the back rooms of people meeting now to do the legislative agenda. It's not suddenly we meet on the third Wednesday of January and then we're going to make up what we're going to do. And this is where these people have got to be active throughout the year, particularly these last 3 months of the year, because that's when they format what's going to come up legislatively.
We're being reactive.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very good point. Instead of being initiated and out front, we're just reacting and like, oh, that's bad, versus, hey, here's the good things that we want to do. Like the CRT, I mean, that critical race theory, people are just being reactive to it. But with what you said earlier, should we behave like New Yorkers and be in your face, or should we be kind and gentle? And it depends on the legislator. Some of them, if you don't get in their face, they could give a crap. The other ones, if you're impolite, they shut you off, even won't read or hear anything about you.
Right. We should, as Christians, we need to have fruit of the Spirit all the time. But I'm just wondering, when you talk about getting things done, it seems like, at least the perception is, that the more writing that you do, the more heard you are. And although we're by no means condoning it, I could just see how the division is happening, and that division leads to chaos. And I don't know if that's planned or not planned, but I know that being active is what I'm hearing you say is don't just sit back, be active, be persistent, keep going, keep pushing through, and get people around you to do the same.
The macro is the squeaky wheel gets the grease. I mean, that's kind of the coverall. Rioting is a little bit more provocative and polarizing.
Right.
I mean,
right.
with torches and other kinds of pitchforks sort of thing. But if people don't act up, and look, in a democracy, you can do that. If you're in China and you do what Colonel Scheller did, you would be missing in the middle of the night. This is the guy who said, hey, Afghanistan leaders, when you pulled us out, didn't you guys make some mistakes? He's in the brig right now. If he was in China, he would be dead because he would be taken in the middle of the night. The people have got these freedoms, and we're not using the freedom. We're not using the expression. We're not using the democratic process. And that's why, hey, you're not using First Amendment? I'm going to take it away from you. And slowly the government's pulling it back.
In closing here, how can our viewers be praying for our government here in Hawaii? What specific thing can we be praying for?
You know, I don't know how to cite scripture by chapter and verse, but I know there's one that says, pray for those in authority over you. And I don't think that's been emphasized in the church, but probably Pastor Hibbs' church and all the other ones who are really saying, pray for those in leaders. You know, one of the lessons of Afghanistan is where you can be smart. I mean, you can be powerful, you can be rich, but that doesn't necessarily make you smart, the way we pulled out of Afghanistan.
Right.
Even when you're smart, it doesn't mean you're going to do the proper thing. So pray for leaders are just like everybody else. They put their pants on one leg at a time. And if they don't have, I mean, look, the beginning of wisdom, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. If you don't have, and I'm not saying that you got to believe in God to be smart, but if you don't have the wisdom of the Lord, you're going to be falling short in a number of ways. So pray for the wisdom of those who are legislators, those who are, you know, there's a price in working and, you know, waving on the highway and all the other stuff that they do, knocking on doors. Pray that they would be wise and do things according to what they were called to do. And I do think it's a calling. And if there's anybody out there who's called to serve in the electoral process, in the democracy process, don't think it's of the enemy. It's as glorious, is as much of a calling for those who are in the pulpit. God has got to have his people everywhere, but we've abandoned Hollywood, we've abandoned media, we've abandoned so much. We've given it to the enemy, and politics is one of those places where, hey, if you're a good Christian and a nice person, you can't go in there and fight and argue with them the way you are because you're supposed to be gentle and nice all the time. Well, no. There's a calling to be a preacher, there's a calling to be a politician. And I know that's contrary to the usual version of it, but I feel very strongly about that. Because once you're there, the Lord will equip you to do it and give you the vision to do it.
Amen. Gene, thank you for being a part of our program.
Thank you for being part of my district as well as this movement to get people activated to do the right thing according to what the scripture says. Thank
Amen.
you.
Thanks for
Aloha.
watching.